Why the Raiders were their own worst enemy and let a W slip right between their fingers. Let's talk about it.
Uh, yeah, uh, yeah.
Let's talk about why the Raiders lost tonight. They lose to the Chargers 22-10. First and foremost, this was an absolute winnable game for the Las Vegas Raiders. Everything was right there for the taking. They actually dominated the first half of that game from the defensive side of the ball. And on the offensive side, they left plays on the field. First and foremost, let's get into the offensive line play. The offensive line was discombobulated. They were not playing together. They were not playing on a string. It was quite obvious. And when your offensive line is not in sync and they're not firing off the ball together as one unit, playing cohesively, what you get is a couple of sputtering plays here and there, and then a sack is given up. A couple of plays here and there, and then boom, turnover. That's what you had. The offense couldn't get into a flow. And you can't get into a flow if your offensive line is not playing as a unit. And let's just call it what it is. Colton Miller is not in playing shape. He's just not. He didn't have any training camp. I understand he's a top 10 left tackle. I understand that he understands what you have to do to be ready to play. But when you have no physical contact since you had your surgery, it's going to be difficult. I don't care how good you are. And you happen to be going up against Khalil Mack, who is a player who already knows you. He knows your strengths and he knows your weaknesses. So what it looked like to me is that Colton wasn't in shape. He wore down. Khalil wore him down. And those sacks happen to come at the most inopportune time. Let me tell you, it's not always about how many sacks you get. It's about when those sacks occur. And every time the Raiders start making a little bit of a push, start getting into a little bit of a rhythm, there's a play here, play to Brock Bowers underneath. You hitting Devontae on a couple of back-to-back first down plays, 12-yard gains, a 15-yard gain. Every time they would get right past the midfield and inside of Chargers territory, that's when they would take a sack. That's when, the offense would give up a play. Or this is when, when it comes to Zeus and what he did, all these self-inflicted things that happened to the Raiders is what made this game frustrating to even watch, because the game was there for the taking. They held the Chargers to 0 for 7 in third down in the first half. That game was the game was there to be taken when they continuously defense kept getting the offense the ball back. It kept getting the ball back. And then you have the momentum crushing fumble by Minshew Gardner right before the half. Remember how that those sequence of plays was going. You had that big play over the middle to Brock Bowers that was about a 15 or 20-yard gain. They're moving the ball down the field. And what it looked like happened on that play was a fake pump fake to look like they were going deep. I think Getsy had dialed up an over-the-top play where he pump fakes out to his left, play action pass, and then throws over the top to Trey Tucker. But what did he do on the fake? He fumbles. And it just happens to be the Raiders' luck that he doesn't fumble or throws the ball and try to pump fakes it and it falls in front of him. It actually goes behind him. Now it's like a lateral and it's a live ball. And so that cost them points, and that really sucked the momentum out of the game for Gardner Minshew and the offense. Now let's get into the defense. The defense was stellar. Again, like I said earlier, they held them to 0-7 in the first half. They were getting great stops up front. Every time that the Chargers tried to run the ball, they were getting stuffed up front. Particularly when they tried to run to the side of Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, and Robert Spillane. They couldn't penetrate that side of the defensive line. They were getting stuffed time after time after time. Spillane had a great game, 10 plus tackles. Wilkins had a great debut as a Raider. He didn't get a sack, but he was in the backfield, pushing the pocket, making things happen, helping Max get open on stunts, which allowed him to get his one and only sack of the game. But they kept pressure in Herbert's face the entire game. Herbert was uncomfortable the entire game. He was 17 of 26 for 155 yards. He was only averaging 5.5 yards per completion. Herbert was getting that ball out quickly. They've gotten into his head. I don't care what anybody says. The last 3 games that Herbert has played, he has not thrown for over 200, basically 200 yards. So they have something on him. But he got bailed out by 3 big runs by KJ Dobbins. Because what happened was the Chargers coaching staff figured out the weak link. And the weak link was Divine Deablo. It's not even questionable. It's not up for argument. Those big runs came by way of Divine Deablo. And anybody who's listened to me understands that I'm not the biggest fan of Divine Deablo, strictly for the fact that he still doesn't play with a natural flow as a linebacker. He doesn't have natural instincts as a linebacker. So in the heat of the moment, a lot of the times, it's that split second that gets him caught up. And he gets himself caught up in the wash. Sometimes it's looked like he even panics out on the field and he just dives into the line without maintaining gap integrity or even being able to be physical enough to get the offensive lineman off of them. So, but if he had the ability to read the play better, which you see from Robert Spillane, because he's a natural linebacker, plays he can see before it develops that gives him that split second advantage that he needs to be able to get by that lineman who's coming out to get to the second level. Divine Deablo lacks that, regardless of how much AP has coached him up as he was his linebackers coach and now as the head coach. I look at that position because it means so much. It is the glue of your defense. And so the Chargers were able to see that he was the weak link. Every big run that KJ Dobbins had, every last one of them came by them attacking Divine Deablo. Now AP's and the coaching staff is going to have to make a decision on how much leeway and how much time and space is Divine Deablo going to be allowed to be given if he continues to be that liability. Because right now, if I'm a coordinator and I'm looking at that, you can see that he's the weak link on that entire defense. The entire defense, if you ask me. The secondary played great. Being able to hold up, play on the island, make plays. Jacorian Bennett with the breakup. Jack Jones being able to undercut a play and force Herbert to throw the ball wide of his target. So they played well. So again, then I got to get into Gardner Minshew himself. 22 he's a 25 or 33, 257 yards with an average of 7.8 yards per pass, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception at the end. Gardner Minshew played well enough for this offense to be able to move and actually score. Like I said, it's the 4 sacks for the 32-yard loss is when he took those sacks. It'd be different if he got sacked and it was just a 2-yard loss or 3-yard loss, and you might can overcome those things. But he took large sacks, big 10-yard losses, and he took them back to back on that last drive right before the 2-minute warning. That was killer. You can't have that. That sucks all the energy from your team, and you can literally see that. So he has some things that he could have did better a couple of times. Could have got the ball out a lot quicker to Devontae, who was open on a couple of curls, especially on those third downs. But I wasn't upset by his play. He definitely could have played better, but he did what was pretty much asked of him. He stayed within the structure of the offense for the most part. When he had that real good check down to Madison, the thing that was impressive about the check down is because he went through his first 2 initial reads and then came back to the natural check down. It wasn't, he didn't try to make something happen, move around, and then get it to his check down. So it came in the rhythm of the play, and that's why you was able to have Madison be able to have a one-on-one and make one guy miss and kind of leap him. The safety couldn't hold him, and he runs in for a touchdown. So it's going to come down to the play of the offensive line. They have to gel. They have to become a unit. JPJ needs to get in there as soon as he can, because we need to know what he is, what he's made of. Is he fully healthy? If so, then it's time to let that young man play and get his feet wet into the NFL and see what we have in a second-round draft pick who was projected to have first-round talent. Parham and the rest of them, everybody has to, to get into a flow with one another so they can play on the string. And once you do that, I don't see them having too much of a problem moving the ball. And as bad as a reputation as Luke Getsy had, players were open for the most part. They were able to make connections to Devontae. To me, I wish he would have threw the ball a little bit more to Jakobi Meyers. He was open a lot of the time. But again, that stuff takes time. So a winnable game. They actually dominated the Chargers for the most part of that game outside of literally 3 runs. So do they have things to improve on? That's the light at the end of the tunnel to me, because we're going to see what the coaching staff is made of. Can they clean up the mistakes that they made? The fumble by Zeus, terrible time that came after a big run that he had just had. And he was actually on his way to gaining another 8 yards when he fumbled that ball. So all the wounds were self-inflicted. The Chargers didn't beat the Raiders. The Raiders beat the Raiders. So tell me what you think were some of the other issues why the Raiders lost to the Chargers. And what do you think they need to fix as they prepare for the next week's game against another Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens? So see you next time. The Raider Way.
Yeah.